Okay, welcome to our city council meeting. Call the meeting to order. It is Thursday, April 10th. We are in Trade and Transit 2, third floor. Please rise for the invocation by Councilwoman Bonnie Katz, followed by the flag salute.
I forgot to unmute myself. Okay. As we gather to make decisions for our community, may we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral. As we consider the merits and the pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move to item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from March 27th, 2025. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion. Any comments, questions? Hearing seen none. Mrs. Frank on item 3.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 4, limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests. We're going to jump to item 9, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution to approve the repayment plan for the outstanding debt owed to the Federal Transit Administration.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. So this is, as Mrs. Frank noted, a resolution to authorize a repayment plan for outstanding debt to the Federal Transit Administration. There's one minor tweak we will need to make before we vote on this. But I think we've got a kind of group comment to make before we do any actions. I'll turn it over to Vice President Bider for that comment.
Thank you very much. In a few moments, those of us present will be voting to approve the repayment of $1.4 million to the Federal Transit Authority. After many hours of discussion amongst ourselves, with legal counsel, and internal reflection, we have come to a united conclusion. We ask that our constituents understand that this is not an admission of guilt by the city. We've been placed in an unfortunate position dealing with a federal agency that has maintained an obstinate determination to pursue what it feels is justice. Since the beginning of this process nearly 5 years ago, City Council and the City of Williamsport has been completely cooperative in every request it has received from the FTA. We have created the Public Transit Authority. We have begun the process of relinquishing properties. We have opened our finances to countless audits and provided every document requested in support of the broader investigation. Not one of us agrees with the way FTA is demanding of repayment when they, along with other agencies and independent firms outside the city, were fully aware through their own audits and legal advice of what was taking place. Voting yes tonight enables us to continue the pursuit of lowering the debt value due to the FTA and is a hopeful means to an end of the federal portion of the investigation. As we continue to engage with our elected representatives from the federal and state level and our legal counsel, we will continue to seek a long-term resolution more amicable for the city and that addresses the systemic issue unearthed by this investigation.
Thanks, Vice President Bider. I'm going to make a motion to make an amendment to the resolution to change on page 2, item 1C to read, the first installment of $35,000 shall be paid from legislative contingency on April 15th, 2025, and each installment payment shall be paid on the 15th day of each month thereafter. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments, questions on the amendment? Mrs. Frank on the motion to amend, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz. Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to amend passes 5-0. And
Can
then
we
back.
go back? I'm sorry, I was muted. It's a yes vote for me.
Thank you, Mrs. Katz. And then back to the main motion. Mrs. Frank on the main motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, main motion passes 6-0. We will jump to, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. We'll jump to item 15, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Williamsport to approve substantial amendments to fiscal year 2019, 2021, and 2023 annual action plans for the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnerships.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Ms. Fessler, good evening. Hit your, there you go.
Let's try again. Good evening.
Good evening.
Jamie Schroeder from CEDACOG should be on Zoom. Can we just give a double check that she's there? Great. She's actually going to take this resolution on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. So this is a resolution approving amendments to your 2019, 2021, and 2023 annual action plans in our continuing effort to clean up some of the older funding in the city. We have some CV funding that needs to be reallocated from the Economic Sustainability and Recovery Project to the Newbury Park improvements. And then we have in 2021, Elm Park, there was a draw made actually for Newbury Park. So we're moving that amount, $9,875 in from Elm into Newbury, just to correct that on the books. And then Memorial Park in 2023, that project is finished. So we have $19,052 that we are able to put into Elm Park.
Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. Finance Committee, Mr. Bider, do you mind covering for Ms. Mealy?
No, not at all. This is another one of the, as was stated, cleanup projects that CEDACOG has been doing for us when it comes to these funds. One of the questions that was asked was in relation to Elm Park, what kind of funding we've been seeing go there. We're kind of looking for a grand total because the project has been ongoing. And then I also asked the question about if we were using the funds for Elm Park that were, the funds that are allocated for Elm Park, were they counted on from this amendment as well? And that was something that is true. They are counted on for this. So that will put us right about at budget with the project at Elm Park.
Awesome. Any comments, questions from members on item 15? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 15, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. We'll jump to item 16.
Resolution to approve the fiscal year 2025 annual action plan for the CDBG and home investment.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Fessler, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. And again to Jamie Schroeder from CEDACOG, who prepared this plan on behalf of the city.
All right, thank you. So this is your 25 to 29 5-year consolidated plan. So every 5 years, we have to do a larger effort in your annual action plan. We're continuing with the priorities of community facilities, infrastructure, possible employment creation projects, administration, and specifically for 2025, projects selected are street reconstruction, the City Parks Bike Path Phase 1, Scott Street Pocket Park for your CDBG funding. And then for the home, it's the owner occupied single family rehab, home buyer assistance, and the Habitat for Humanity housing construction. So basically tonight, if you would take action to approve the plan, which has been out for the proper comment period and is ready to go, we can get council approval that'll allow us to start on all of the background items like environmental reviews and those things, design, so that once we actually have your allocations and we can submit this to HUD for their approval, that comes through, we're ready to move with projects rather than waiting around to get allocations and then put it out for council approval. So once this is approved, and we get allocations, what we would do is we would raise or lower the street reconstruction number based on whatever difference between last year's allocation and the new one. And then the same thing for administration. If less or more, we'll adjust that so it doesn't exceed 20%. And then for home, we would raise or lower the owner occupied housing rehab depending on the allocation. And then the same for admin to make sure we don't exceed the 10%.
Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. Mr. Biter, Finance, anything to add?
Not much to add, just a simple comment to make. Valerie and also Jamie, thank you both very much for what you've been doing, bringing this department back up to speed and making it a very useful piece of city government once again. The one comment that was made about economic development, I do agree with Mr. Mackey that he brought up some great points in the Finance Committee meeting. But I also have to agree with Jamie and Valerie that we need to get our feet underneath us first before we start to look at some of these other programs and really dive into them because of the amount of work that they require and making sure all our T's are crossed and I's dotted before we get into more.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Biter. Any comments or questions from members on item 16? All right. Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 16.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Val.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mealy actually asked me if I would ask our new staff member in our department to introduce himself quickly during this part of the evening. So we have Scott Williams with us tonight. He's the new Assistant Director / City Planner in the Department of Community and Economic Development. He comes to us with an extensive background in planning, over 15 years at Lycoming County Planning. He's on the Williamsport School Board, and I'll let him introduce himself.
I think that was a pretty good introduction already. Hi, Scott Williams. I think a lot of you already know me from my 13 years with the County Planning Department, but yeah, I'm very excited to be working for the city now. I am a city resident, so getting to work for the city is very cool for me. So glad to be here. Only on day 4, so I don't really have a lot to report right now. You'll be hearing from me for sure. I know we have a lot of exciting things, even in the first week, that we've been kicking around, big ideas that we've got, moving forward. So great to be here. Thank you.
Welcome aboard, Scott. We're glad to have you. We'll move to item 17. We have a subdivision lot consolidation from the Williamsport Bureau of Transportation. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Nar, I will turn the floor over to you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Biter, members of council. What we present to you tonight is the Williamsport Bureau of Transportation is requesting a 2-lot consolidation. What this is actually a continuation of the finalization separation between RVT and the city of Williamsport. This parcel was developed back in the 2009 timeframe as a land development plan. It went through council, got approval. However, under the requirements, they were required to get it recorded in 90 days. That failed to happen. So as part of the separation, when we went through the deed process to separate and exchanged RVT with the city of Williamsport's deeds, we came across this. So therefore, this is just merely cleaning up the separation and finalizing that. Again, what it was is 2 separate parcels. They combined it for one, did a land development plan over it. It was reviewed by county as well as city planning commission.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Any comments or questions from members? All right. Pretty straightforward. Mrs. Frank on item 17.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. We'll jump to item 18, a subdivision for Reach Road 2250 LLC. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar.
Yes, what this is a subdivision request. If you remember back in January 23rd of 2025, they did obviously a subdivision to separate the 2 parcels. There's 2 separate buildings. It went through, got approval, it got recorded. However, the new tenant that is moving into the facility, which would be to the western property, has requested another additional half acre so that they could finalize what they want to do. So therefore, we had to bring it back before for a new subdivision. And that half acre will be added to the west property based on the plans that you have. It was reviewed by county, reviewed by planning, and is here for your final approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nar. Any comments or questions on item 18? Okay, here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on item 18?
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. We'll move to item 19, demolition for 1422 Elmira Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Nar?
This is a demo request for 1422 Elmira Street. It is a vacant, single-family home. It is currently owned by First Church of Williamsport, which is out on Market Street. They're requesting to demo this house for additional off-street parking or possibly a playground area for the church.
Are there any comments or questions? Okay, here you can see none. Mrs. Frank?
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 20, certificate of appropriateness for 220 West Fourth Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar?
This property is 220 West Fourth Street, is within the Central Business District, which requires a certificate of appropriateness. They are requesting to, obviously, you have images of the existing marquee. They are looking to update it and make it digital. It does meet zoning requirements, but again, as far as a certificate of appropriateness is required to go through this process, they're merely updating the marquee at 220 West Fourth Street, West Fourth Street, which is a community arts center.
Are there any comments, questions on item 20?
Gary, you said digital, the whole thing is going to be digital?
There's still some of it that will not be digital. If you look at the drawings that you have, it's in different segments that will be digital. The rest of it will be just
That's
part of the
great.
marquee.
Okay, great.
Mr. Bider?
So it looks like on B1, B2 is where it's going to be a permanent piece where they have basically a sponsor
Correct.
there. Okay. So they're not going to be selling more advertising on that sign.
Just for
Just
basically
for
the
that.
functions.
Okay.
Within the city's zoning ordinance, off-premise advertising is restricted in certain areas. So it's just merely for those sponsored events.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Looks pretty sharp.
Yeah, looks very sharp. Okay, here you can see none then, Mrs. Frank on item 20.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. We'll move to 21. Certificate of appropriateness for 213 West Fourth Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Nar?
213 West Fourth Street, again, is within the Central Business District. It is the Woodlands Bank. You do have images. They're basically making an earth tone green color Woodlands Bank on the side of the building, which requires a certificate of appropriateness. It does meet zoning requirements for size, and they have applied for their building permits.
Any comments or questions from members? Okay. Here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on item 21.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. We'll go back in order from here the rest of the way through. Let's jump to item 5. Mrs. Frank?
An ordinance amending Article 117, General Fee Schedule. In final reading, it was tabled.
Is there a motion and a second to remove from the table?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on removing? Mrs. Frank on the motion to remove from the table?
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to remove from the table passes 6-0. Mr. Nar.
Again, as part of the cleanup of the general fee schedule, the concern was obviously was the barricades. We added the language in there for the non-water barricades. And the main sticking point, I believe, was the mulch and brush pile based off of acreage. So what we've done is Scott Livermore and I sat down and come up with a plan, and basically anything less than 5 acres, the fee will be $250. And every 5 acreage increments, it will go up to hit that 1,000 on over 20 acres. In addition, obviously, Austin had pointed out that make sure we have certain verbiage in there. So we have all the definitions for the brush in there as well. And it was reviewed by Austin White, the solicitor. Sorry, Austin.
Okay. Any comments, questions on the changes since we talked about this 2 weeks ago? I know, there was a lot of discussion about the brush piece. Strikes me as an improvement. Remember a little bit of dialogue on the water barriers as well. Comments, thoughts? Feel better about it? I do myself, so I take silence as, yeah, we feel good about it. Let's just do it and get it done. Okay. Any final comments, questions? Yeah, Austin, please.
The table, there's some language that needs to be corrected in this table. If you look at the table, it's supposed to say
Which table? Like what part of
on
the table?
the brush recycling collection area.
I'm sorry, guys.
The next to last page,
Yep,
yellow
there we go.
highlighted.
Okay.
So each of the items that say commercial property owner, it should just say commercial property owner. And then underneath each one, which is correct, there's the, less than 5, 5 to 10. So as far as approving this tonight, I just request that you make a motion that we can correct, a motion to amend to reflect that each of these items should just say commercial property owner, commercial property owner. You can see then it says commercial properties owner,
I see.
commercial properties. It should just say commercial property owner for each one.
Okay.
Because that's what I was talking about last time, which is it's referring down to the definition, which is below there under 5. And if you look at 5, it says commercial property owner and it says shall be defined as an individual
Yeah.
entity. And then it refers with the applicable access fees determined by the combined deeded acreage as set forth in the table above. So we just want to make sure that
Okay.
it's all clear for when we codify this. I don't want to have the errors in the codification.
So I'll make a motion to amend table I that all commercial properties reflect verbiage of commercial property owner in line with item 5 below the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions on the motion to amend? Austin, that covers it language wise?
That's perfect.
Thank you. Hearing and seeing none, then Mrs. Frank on the motion to amend?
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes, motion to amend, passes 6-0 back to the main motion. Austin, anything else from your perspective?
No, that's all.
Awesome. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? All right, Mrs. Frank, then on the main motion for item 5.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Gary, Scott, thank you both for your work and collaboration on us catching some stuff and our feedback. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. We'll jump to item 6, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance amending Part 1 of the codified ordinances of the city of Williamsport in first reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move. Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Mackey, this is yours, sir.
Thank you, President Yoder. Yeah, this is really just kind of born from 2 weeks ago. We had a resident come and express, I think, some valid concerns. And, you know, I'm not let's just keep doing things the way we do them because that's the way we've always done them. So I feel like by amending the order of public comment at the end of meetings, it will give residents of Williamsport a better opportunity to get answers to questions they might have that night. I mean, it occurred to me 2 weeks ago when this gentleman was standing in front of us that a lot of the issues that he was raising, people who could answer those questions were sitting right here in the room. And it bothered me that we didn't answer or rectify any of those problems. So I think by having the public go first, then city council, and then have the administration go, and then the news media, this will allow city council, it'll allow the administration, members of the administration who are here, the ability to take notes and possibly come up with answers and solutions to these issues while we're all sitting here in the same room, as opposed to just sitting here and not doing anything. So that's kind of the impetus of this. And, you know, we'll talk more about that, you know, at the end of the meeting tonight. But anyway, yeah, that's the entire thought process behind this. So.
John, appreciate it very much. You know, the thing I would add, you know, people might think, well, what do you do? You're just kind of changing the ordering. It's a little thing, but I think something that resident said last week or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, what really struck me, and I think kind of aligns with this, you know, it's the little itty bitty things that you don't think of that we can do that will really compound and kind of build up and make a big difference. And so for us, I think legislatively, this is just one of those little itty bitty things that might look small, but I think it will make a difference. So I appreciate the push behind it, John.
Yeah, I mean, and I think at the end of the day, right or wrong, city council meetings are really one of the only places that residents can come to and express their concerns. And I think that when they do that, and when it's a valid concern, I think that we should do the best, along with the administration's help, to answer those questions when they're here. They're taking their time to come down here. A lot of times they're sitting here through the entire meeting to be able to get to say what they want to say in 3 minutes. We should at least give them the respect and try and get them the answers that they need while they're here. So, and I think that's, you know, another thing we tried to do when we changed how limited courtesy of the floor works, right? Saying that you don't need to get a hold of Janice by Wednesday at 12 o'clock, or you can't talk about something that's going to be on the agenda the next day, right? You should be able to come in here and talk to Janice and say, hey, there's something on the agenda I want to talk about. And you should be able to talk about it because people are busy. You know, everybody can't get to Janice by 12 o'clock. And so I think this is, again, just something that, you know, we can do as a newer city council to kind of change the way things have always worked. So.
Here. Any comments, questions on first reading? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, then Mrs. Frank on item 6.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thanks, John. We will move to item 7, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance, transfer ordinance number 1 in first reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Livermore, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. The ordinance you have before you tonight is to revise the flood levy line item in the 2025 Act 13 budget. We need to increase the line item by $72,041. I see that there is an error on my sheet here, but it should be increased by $72,041 for payment to WSP for SQRA services. There was 2 resolutions approved, one in 2023 and one in 2024 for SQRA services for the levy in total of 169,000. We do need to increase 2025 because we removed all budget from the levy line item, not realizing that there was still a portion of this that needed to be paid in 2025. So this will allow us to be able to pay the rest of this service to WSP for the SQRA for the levy.
Thank you very much. This was the third thing that was reviewed in finance. Ms. Mealy, I'll turn it over to you.
The gist of our discussion was pretty simple. This is not new funding, new money, or in any way a change order owed to WSP for work that was awarded to them. It's merely that the work is not yet concluded, so we haven't drawn down the total amount of the budget that we'd set aside for this. It does, however, affect our year-end totals. I think you'll all remember that we had a total in our budget books last year of how much was left in Act 13. And this was not included in that total. So we have $72,000 less in Act 13 funding at this point, surplus than we would have expected to have at this point. The only other note that I would make is, of course, that this is money intended for levy work, which is why we set aside the emergency and reserve fund in part. I don't know that it makes sense to take this money out of the emergency and reserve fund instead of Act 13, but I did just want to bring that up in case anybody had an idea other than mine of some reason why. I don't think we're more restricted with emergency and reserve or Act 13 particularly, so I don't think it really makes a difference, but I just wanted to put it out there that that was the purpose of that funding. So if we if we presume at some point we'll need to dip into it for levy work, then this could be a point when we should consider it. The rest of the discussion was mainly, I think, me and perhaps other people somewhat catching up on what's been happening with the levy, but between Randy and Jamie, I think we now have access to about $11 million in funding. We are expecting to actually break ground on something related to the levy sometime soon. And that was part of me getting up on a bit of a high horse about the fact that we've put a lot of money into that levy while not actually fixing anything that's wrong with it yet. But it seems as though we will be doing that in the very near term. So that was exciting news. And that's everything that I recall to report. I'll defer to other members of the committee just in case.
Any comments or questions? The only thing I would maybe add, Liz, on the emergency reserve piece of this is I know we are at least planning to use some of that for match, right? And so I do think it would be good sooner than later, before we dip into that for like smaller project type work, to understand what actually is left in there outside of match. So we can probably be more educated in when we want to dip into that, but you're right. I mean, that was part of the reason for establishing that, was for some of that. So it's there if we need it.
And I'm not suggesting that we go ahead and willy-nilly spend it just because this is a levy related item, but I am suggesting that we have multiple demands on our finances and that there may be things that we can use the Act 13 funding for that we might not use.
Agreed.
So
Understood. Any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, then Mrs. Frank on item 7.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
yes,
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 8, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing payment to Fish Commercial Group for brokerage services related to former City Hall property.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Livermore.
Hello again. So this resolution is to pay an invoice that we received from Fish Real Estate. The resolution does state that it will be coming from legislative contingency. However, I do want to make everybody aware that since the bids came in 2023 and there was budget in 2023. We will be moving it to the 2023 legislative contingency line item. Just so that everything is audibly correct. But truly, this is just, I believe there was something in the contract about the $20,000, and Austin has reviewed the contract and all of the requests in the invoice, and this is a payment we need to make to Fish.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on item 8.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jamie. We did item 9. We'll jump to item 10, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution Real Estate Reduction, John Ryan, West Pharmaceutical.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Mr. Kevin Mackey. The floor is yours, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. I had to walk myself from the other side of the room. So John Ryan is under the LERTA program. I think this is been on here for a while now, and this is one of 2 that we have currently on the books. My office continues to notify businesses of the programs we have available for them, and the LERTA program is one of them.
Okay. Any comments or questions related to item 10? Okay. Hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on item 10.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 11.
Resolution Real Estate Exoneration, 2620 West Fourth Street.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Mackey.
This is a veterans exemption for 2620 West 4th Street. The taxpayer did go through the proper channels and went through with assessment to get this done. So we're just acknowledging that the assessment did this and also adjusting our rates to match what should be done for the veterans exemption.
You said this is a veterans exemption?
Yes.
Do you know anything about where, when they served or not?
I don't.
That's
Assessment
okay.
is the normal one that handles a lot of the stuff from this. We just tell them assessments who you want, if you want the exemption, so.
No, just whoever they are, if they're watching, thanks for their service. It's very much appreciated. Any comments or questions from members? Yes, Mr. Mackey.
As long as we got it up. So again, if there are veterans in the city and they do meet the criteria, they should reach out to the assessment office to see if they qualify for this, so.
Absolutely. They've earned it 10 times over at least.
What would qualify? Do we have any idea what is required?
I think there's disability involved with it. I can get more of the information on that and release a statement on it. I was already planning on doing that with the business stuff, so I'll just make this a part of that plan toward the end of this month.
Yeah, Kevin, it might be helpful to have some stuff in your office, like just
Yeah.
handy. I don't know if the assessment office has anything or not that you could like grab, but
They do.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do. Brooke is very kind about getting some stuff over if we need it, so.
nice. Sorry, Liz, I didn't mean to cut you off. I feel like I got into there.
That was
My bad.
all I want. That was my only question.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Hearing and seeing none, then Mrs. Frank on item 11.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 12, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution Real Estate Interim Exoneration, 708 Poplar Street.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Mackey.
So as improvements are done in the city and the assessment office tries to ensure that things are done to the most accurate timeline, they don't want to, again, assess things that are not appropriate at times when the improvements are not completed. So this is just recognizing that the improvements were not completed at this property and that the tax is not due for this period of time.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Yes, Mr. Mackey.
So there is also the residential LERTA that you guys discussed earlier last year. I think it's still approved for this year. So again, if there are people that are doing improvements on the property that may have changed their assessed tax value, they should also reach out to assessment. Or sorry, reach out to DCED with Valerie and she can get you guys going in the right direction.
Any other comments, questions from members?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. I was reading a text.
You wanna mute her? I don't, she just doesn't realize she's not muted.
She asked that, she told me she's gonna leave for the meeting.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, any other comments or questions? Anything final to add, Mr. Mackey? Okay. Mrs. Frank, item 12, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Ryder,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 13.
Resolution authorizing lease agreement with York Adams Tax Bureau.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Mackey?
I just have one amendment to make this. In my rush during tax season, I forgot to take out BIG, which was the Business Information Group. They were the previous owners of our software and they sold the software and stuff to York Adams Tax Bureau. So York Adams Tax Bureau will be the one that is managing a lot of our systems, a lot of our tax software going forward. So I'm not sure if we could do that as an amendment or if that has to be redone at a later point.
So is this simply updating
Yes.
verbiage to change the name?
No, so we had an agreement with Big last year.
Okay.
Again, it has to be an annual thing for how they operate. But York Adams bought them out within the past year, so they took over ownership of the software. And we're just redoing the lease with York Adams, but I forgot to change Business Information Group or Big in the paragraph portion of that.
So we're renewing,
In the top, the very.
Yeah,
So we're renewing the lease,
correct, yes.
which we would have done anyway. In addition to renewing it, we need to change the name.
Yes,
Okay.
So-
And you're talking about the name on the resolution,
Yeah.
page 1, right?
correct, yes.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to amend the resolution to change on the first page, be it hereby resolved section, to change Business Information Group to York Adams Tax Bureau.
Second.
Motion and a second to amend. Comments, questions on the change? This is Frank on the motion to amend.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Ryder,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to amend passes 7-0. That's no problem at all. And then back to the main motion. Are there comments, questions for Kevin on the lease renewal? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, then Mrs. Frank on item 13.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Ryder,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Item 14, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution awarding the aggregate bids for the city of Williamsport.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Good evening, council.
Good evening, sir.
This is our yearly contract with bids to get our aggregates for jobs for the upcoming year.
Any comments or questions?
How much of a price increase did we see year over year?
Not much, we can change it just a little bit. Like if one's a little bit higher, but it's closer, we can go to closer to get it. Maybe it might be more expensive. But if we go get it ourselves, it's cheaper than have them delivered. So like, New Enterprise, if we go get, I can't, it's not on here right now. It was last year's though, but it was on Stone. It was $5 more a ton, but it saved us money because it's only in, we went to Heidelberg to Montoursville. And instead of a 3-hour ride to get it, because they would deliver it, it costs us like $200 for them to deliver it.
Okay.
So it's roughly about the same every year, just we can choose, but we have to document who gets it cheaper though.
Okay.
Why?
Any
There-
other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
There was no bid on Cool Patch this year, but no one put a bid in for it, but we talked to the company normally get it for, and we're actually getting it cheaper this year than we did last year. By a couple bucks.
Nice.
And how does it work when nobody bids?
We can just call who we want, but they're the ones that we like what they have.
Okay.
And they normally they're the only ones that normally ever put the bid in anyways.
Mhm.
So they said there was no sense of putting the bid in. So we can just call them.
And then they'll give it to us cheaper.
Yeah, they actually gave it to us cheaper this year than last year.
Okay.
So it works out.
Well, they didn't have to bid it, so I mean, it's less work. So, all right.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Allison.
The cold patch, are we gonna use that to, do alleys again? Like we-
No, what we use the Cool Patch for is just temporary patches for potholes and everything until we start the season for hot patching. So if you see just a hole, you'll see, we put it in there.
Right,
Just to temporarily get us through until we can start hot patching.
okay, so.
It's
but,
just a temporary fix.
And do we have a list yet of what we're gonna do?
We have a hotline out right now for the potholes right now. And then I also have work orders for what we're gonna be paving,
Yeah,
where a lot of them are.
okay, great. I know we got a lot of, you guys got a lot done last year, so.
Yeah,
I think people are looking forward to seeing more of that. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Hearing and see none, Mrs. Frank on item 14.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. We'll jump to 22, certificate of appropriateness, from Harb. There's a pile of items on here, so I'll read the addresses for the record here. So Mrs. Frank can kind of keep track, but, we've got 2 items on 1056 West 4th Street. We've got, appear to be 5, at 1046 West 4th Street. 2 items at 811 West 3rd Street. One at 900 West 3rd Street and 3 at 761 West 4th Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions on any of these certificates from Harp? Hearing and seeing none then, Mrs. Frank on item 22.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 23, except for filing Water and Sanitary Authority minutes from January 22nd and February 26, 2025, and the Brandon Park and Shade Tree Commission minutes from February, March, and October of 2024. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Any comments, questions, changes to any of the minutes that anybody's aware of? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 23.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 24, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be on Thursday, April 24th, 2025, 7 p.m. Trade and Transit 2. Upcoming meetings on Tuesday, April 15th, 6:30 p.m. Historic Architectural Review Board. Wednesday, April 16th, 10 a.m. Blighted Property. Thursday, April 17th, 10 a.m. Zoning Commission. Friday, April 18th is Good Friday and City Hall will be closed. Tuesday, April 22nd, 11:30 a.m. Public Safety, 11:30 a.m. Redevelopment Authority, 1 p.m. Finance, 2:30 p.m. Public Works, all depending on what comes through on the agenda. Wednesday, April 23rd, 9 a.m. Economic Revitalization. Thursday, April 24th, our next city council meeting. In spirit of John's ordinance, I'll go in a different order. Are there any comments from members of the public? Okay. Any comments from members of council? Mr. Mackey?
Thank you. Yeah, if we could just circle back somewhat related to item 6 on the agenda. Again, we had a gentleman here 2 weeks ago. He expressed several concerns. On their face, they all kind of seem separate, individual concerns. But, the more I thought about them, the more I realized that they were all kind of connected, right? So, just as a refresher, some of the concerns were the overnight parking of a trailer at the levee adjacent lot. Generally, parking enforcement in particularly Newberry section of town, cars parked on the wrong side of the street. Inability to get in touch with the watch commander. Abandoned vehicle near Park Pizza on the street, and then some, abandoned vehicles and trash left in a park and ride area, kind of again over in the Newberry section. So for the public's information, I sent out an email to the administration, to codes, to the police, to the mayor, to streets and parks to ask about some of these issues. I got some responses. Gary, I know that you said you sent a notice to the owner of that trailer to move it. I don't know if you could come up and just explain why that type of activity is not allowed, and then maybe we can discuss any further options that we might have to stop anybody really from parking overnight in that lot.
The bicycle center trailer that is parked there at the Dike Levee System, that is actually, the property actually is owned there by the county. However, the city has a zoning ordinance which says no off-premising advertising is permitted. So therefore, he's in violation, even though the county may allow him to park it there. The city's zoning ordinance says that you cannot do off-premise advertising, and it is in violation. I did send him a notice. He has 48 hours once he gets the notice to remove that. If not, the fines can be at least $500 a day at that point.
And
so
then-
he was sent a notice.
And the notice was sent on
This notice was sent on Monday.
this past, like March 31st Monday, or?
Correct. We had to compile the information. I did notify county that basically we are sending him a notice, even though the county may approve him to set it there. It's in violation of the city zoning ordinance. So whether it's on private property or whether it's on commercial property, it is in violation of the city zoning ordinance for off-premise advertising.
So is getting with the county probably something that we would want to do in terms of maybe putting up signage that specifically states no overnight parking? Because there is signage that says closed dusk till dawn.
We have reached out and talked to the county, and the
yeah.
county's working on that.
And just as a point of note, the trailer's still there as of
Correct.
tonight. So, yeah. So, but it's been 10 business days since they've received
Yeah.
that notice.
Technically, what happens under the zoning law, I gave him 48 hours to remove it because he can have the ability to remove it. However, under the zoning statute, he does have the right to appeal that decision within 30 days. So I can't legally cite him at 30 days. If he has not removed it and he has not filed an appeal, he is found guilty in the court, and it's $500 for each day that it has sat there.
All right. And I guess if you just want to stay there too, I mean, when we talk about this abandoned vehicle, next to Park Pizza is actually on the street, you inform me that is nothing that codes can specifically do anything about. That is the police's.
On the street, we cannot, the only ones we can enforce is on private property, and it becomes under the International Property Maintenance Code. So anything on the street, we cannot enforce it from a codes perspective.
And forgive me for not knowing every single code in the city, but is it legal or illegal to do any type of work on a vehicle when it's parked on a public street? Because it does appear that vehicle has been extensively, maybe even just taken apart.
What I did do from a codes perspective, actually from a stormwater perspective, it's an illicit discharge. And he was sent a notice this week. I took pictures and sent him a
Okay.
notice that he's in violation of the stormwater for an illicit discharge.
So if a illegally parked vehicle is the responsibility of the police to actually physically move, chief, what's the best way for a resident to inform our police department? I mean, we don't want them to call 911 for something like that. My guess, it would be the watch commander, the non-emergency number, or,
No, we actually have a number for abandoned vehicles.
and what is that?
I knew you were gonna ask me. I just asked him to get it for him. I don't know off the top of my head.
We'll play Chief.
If he can get that though, he's gonna
Yeah.
get that for you though. We do have an abandoned officer hotline, or excuse me, abandoned vehicle hotline that we have an officer that takes care of that.
Okay,
We just gotta understand the abandoned vehicle process takes time, just like you were talking about with
Yeah.
the zoning and stuff. So like that particular one is being addressed, but it's not necessarily a quick fix.
okay.
Would you be so kind as to maybe articulate a little bit of what that process looks like? And I ask that because
I can-
you've
I
told
can
me a little
provide
bit
it.
about others, and it's very enlightening. And I didn't know some of the, I don't want to say bureaucracy, but like, it's a very, some other processes I know you have to go through are very long and tedious, and I'm confident the general public
They
doesn't
are.
know about that either.
I can give a very simplistic approach to it.
Sure.
And get you the policy for it. But what happens is that you have to give a good amount of time and give the person the opportunity to make it right, to do it right and make it right. So that's one of the things we deal with. So there's several communications that happen between the abandoned vehicle officer and that person to try to determine whether or not the vehicle is actually abandoned. And if it's determined that it's abandoned, then we can take action on that. But it is a little bit of a process. We only have one person that does that, and we do get multiple calls for that. And not everyone is determined to be abandoned. So, but you still have to go through kind of an investigatory state to figure that out and whatnot. So it does take a little bit of time. So, okay, if you call our number, there's a phone tree that you can go there with the option for abandoned vehicles.
Which number is that?
Yeah, it's the 570-327-7560 number.
I'm sorry, can you repeat
Yeah,
that?
sorry, 570-327-7560.
And that would be considered the non-emergency number that people will call.
No, that's our number to the police department.
That's the watch commander's number
Yeah, well, that'll go to a phone tree to give you options, so.
to get to the watch
would be
commander.
one of those.
Okay.
And then is there is there a option for abandoned vehicles?
There
So
is, yes.
if I call that, let's say option one's watch commander, option two is
Yes, it'll give you a
something,
prompt.
option three is abandoned vehicles.
You give it a prompt, you go in, you leave your message, the abandoned vehicle officer will come back later, go through them all and start that process.
Could you just kind of, I mean, while we're on the topic of the watch commander, again, it's something that one of the residents mentioned. I mean, could you just kind of walk us through
Yes.
and for the public's sake too, the watch commander's duties, are they expected to answer the phone? And if they're not expected to answer the phone, are they expected to call people back when messages are
Yes, and
left?
this happens, but you gotta imagine how many people call. So you gotta understand the watch commander's position. So again, we talked about this before in the past. We're very understaffed with our police department. So a lot of times what happens is the watch commander, who's in charge of the entire shift, will have to go out in the street and service calls. And when they're out there servicing calls, they're not gonna be there to answer the phone. So when they're out there, they make their best effort to try to get back to everybody. But sometimes what you get too is people just aren't happy with the news that they get from the watch commander. So then they
Sure.
create, they go around and make some issues. So we try to do the best we can to answer the public's questions that they have. We do deal a lot of times where the public doesn't like what the answer that they get. But the watch commander is not obligated to sit there the entire shift. They are going out, they're supervising and leading their officers on the street as well. So, but they do come in, try to make calls and try to get back. Or if a call comes into for an officer on their shift, to make sure that that voice message gets to that officer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, that's great information, right? And this is what I'm talking about. What we just talked about right here, I wish we would have talked about that 2 weeks ago when that gentleman was standing here. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think we need to do a better job of. And I'm not asking any of these questions, and and that's why I sent you this email a week ago. Nobody's implying that the Williamsport Bureau of Police is not doing the best job that they can, right? I'm a former police officer. I know it's been a long time since I've been a police officer, so I have the utmost respect for everything that they do, but I just want to make sure that we're not missing the little things, much like he said, because several months ago, we had a business in town who I just spoke to the owner a couple times over the past couple of days. We had a business come here and have to spend, and again, I'm not casting blame on anyone. I'm just saying, here's an example of where something might have fallen through the cracks, right? You have this business that comes and they have to spend their own money to enforce our parking, code, right? And in hindsight, yeah, I almost wish that I wouldn't have voted for that. I wish I would have voted no, because the answer to me would have been, no, we don't want this business to spend their own money to put up parking balances to stop people from illegally parking. The answer should be, let's get some targeted parking enforcement over there for just a week. And as soon as people get the idea that if they park there, they're going to get a ticket, people are going to stop parking there. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that I am. But, and again, this is not me saying that people aren't doing their job. I'm just saying that, it doesn't take much to drive around town and to see people parked the wrong way, parked on the sidewalk. And I understand that I understand we're understaffed. I understand our officers are busy. I worked in the 19th district, one of the busiest districts in the city of Philadelphia, and I still was expected and had time to write parking tickets. And again, this is not saying that our police aren't out there doing the best that they can, but I tend to agree with the gentleman who was here 2 weeks ago. If you start missing the little things, if you start letting people park, and again, this is nothing against codes, if you start letting people park their trailers wherever they want, and that's when things start to go haywire a little bit. So
No, absolutely understand it and absolutely hear what you're saying, but there's a bunch of variables in place as well. So one is being that it's a $10 ticket. So there's really not much enforcement beyond the fact that we could put a ticket on your windshield. You pay the $10 and then you still continue to park backwards. And then we come back and just give another ticket. It's not an end all to the issues. And, you bring up the issues, all we hear about is the ones that aren't handled. You don't hear about how many are handled. So the issue is, again, and I know you touched on it a little bit, but we are understaffed and parking's not necessarily a priority. I wish it could be a priority just as much as everything else, but we're trying to keep up with the big things. So when the stuff comes up with parking issues, we try to handle it the best we can, but we can't always. Because right now, we're looking at some numbers here with the start of this year already, over 150, our co-responder has dealt with over 150 mental emergency issues that we have. And we're trying to sustain that. And we're trying to sustain the, unfortunately, the CSAM and the child stuff going on right now. We're trying to take it and stay on top of that. We could barely keep our heads afloat. So what happens with us, and we try to prioritize the issues. So, and obviously people crimes comes first, and we're trying to take care of the people crimes that come first. And then it's the property crimes that come next. So prioritizing that, we're trying to get them all, but sometimes it's just hard to get down to that, I know parking issues for some is a big deal. I'm going to be very transparent. It's not on the top of the priority things for me. We try to handle it when we can. There's just so many other things we're trying to handle and trying to keep our heads afloat. Again, I'm going to, the issue we talk about with officers and trying to take officers away. We are understaffed and overworked. Their resiliency, they do a great job, but it is hard to maintain and keep everything as they're going, and they are doing a great job. But like I said to you before, let's not mistake the resiliency for being okay. So we are trying to take care of those little things and those little issues and not let them fall through the cracks the best we can. But, you know, with the big things that we're dealing with, you look at policing, it's not the same as it was 20 years ago. It's not the same as when you were policing. It's much different. And those little things that you want to concentrate on more are much more difficult in policing today, just because of the scope of things that we're dealing with at the top, especially with the people crimes. So I hear what the gentleman's saying, and we try to do our best to handle that stuff, but we can't always make you happy. And sometimes if you get a call that comes in for a parking complaint, okay, duly noted, we'll try to get to it sometime in the shift if we can get an officer over that way.
Yeah, and I appreciate everything that you just said. But there's got to be some sort of a happy medium too, I think, right?
Sure, we can come up with something and try to work on it and focus on it a little bit more. But again, it costs money, because if you do some kind of enforcement, there's something that you're taking away from one thing here to go do that. If you're talking about doing it, because I would love to put together a traffic enforcement unit. We don't have the resources. We don't have the means.
Well, I mean, outside of a traffic enforcement unit though, from in between calls while patrolling.
Again, I just want people to understand, and I'm just gonna let everybody know this. When somebody goes to a call, it's not just the call at hand that you're dealing with. Now you're dealing with all the reports that follow it. And then if an arrest happens, the whole criteria that now follows that arrest, that officers are trying to do in between those calls that they're going to. So for a majority of it is trying just to handle that, or going back into the police department to try to get the reports done, catch up on the reports. Because that's a hard thing too, is just keeping up on the reports that need to be done. And then there you got to prioritize as well. So to sit there and try to ask officers to go out when they're, we're running, they're dog tired, running the calls, and then trying to keep up with the arrests and all the follow-up supplemental paperwork that follows that. And then to sit there and go out and now put tickets out there. And we've done that, but you don't hear about it when it's done. But the thing is, sometimes, we just can't do it. But we are trying to make sure that we get out there and do it. So that's the best I can do.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. And yeah, just generally speaking, I think if these are the kind of conversations we can have the night that people raise, and again, I'm talking about valid concerns, right? We're not going to touch on everything. We can't. We don't have that kind of time. I mean, I suppose we could stay here for 4 hours every other Thursday. That would be fine with me. But yeah, I appreciate, Gary, I appreciate you explaining some of those things too. I just think it's important that, if we can put people's minds at ease in the moment, I think it would be maybe a better practice to get into. So no, but thank you. So I've taken enough time tonight, so I will yield the floor to anybody else.
Time well spent. Thank you very much. Any other comments from members of council? Mr. Allison, yeah.
Yeah. Liz, do you remember, didn't we at one point use the parking authority?
We discussed it. I don't know that we ever have, but yeah, I was kind of thinking that maybe we actually need a force of people who can just do low level enforcement in the city.
For the low
less
level
expensive.
stuff. Yeah.
It's-
I thought it was actually going to be put into practice up around Lycoming College,
We've
because of
discussed
the
it.
parking along the street there. And I'm not sure that it got implemented, but there was an effort to use the parking authority to, the low level stuff,
On street
kind of
enforcement.
like we're talking about here.
Sort of the broken window stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that
maybe
I'm curious,
Yeah.
and Assistant Chief Bolt, Chief Snyder, maybe you know the answer to this. How many parking enforcement officers does the parking authority actually employ right now? One. Okay, and they generally work from 8 to, so that is what? Okay. I mean, while we're on the issue of parking, and again, it could be something to look into. So the parking authority has one parking enforcement officer that works
They
during the
used to have
day.
two, right?
I mean, there
At least two.
are a significant amount of signs, you know, in a lot of our lots in Williamsport that say parking enforced from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Which, what's the best way to put this? Doesn't seem,
It doesn't line up with.
it doesn't line
hours
up
of
with the
their-
hours of the parking enforcement officer. So in essence, you know, we're really asking people to pay for parking when they don't need to. And, you know, after hours, after work hours, when we want people to come downtown, right? That's we've got a ton of great restaurants and shops that stay open later. So the idea that the parking authority is posting signs and having people put money into those meters when they know full well that nobody's going to come along to put a ticket on those cars, doesn't seem right. And I don't know how we address that. I don't know who we need to start a conversation with, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. Because it doesn't feel right, for lack of a better term.
Agreed. Agreed. Any other comments from members? Okay. Any comments from the administration? Any comments, clarifications from the news media? No? All right, I will take a motion in a second for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, meeting's adjourned. Have a good evening.